Good afternoon. I am Anto Budiardjo. This is Monday Live, something that we do every Monday afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern, as we try and figure out what the future of smart buildings is all about. So it's really good to have you all here, or if you're watching the YouTube, or if you're reading Ken Sinclair's summary of it. Either way you consume it. In case you're wondering who we are, our profiles are listed on mondaylive.org. And just to point out that views expressed here are personal, not of any company or organization. And let's make it interactive with the Zoom chat. That always makes it much more interesting for everyone. So this being June, it's actually the end of June. We're going to continue on our readiness theme, although we're going to tweak it a little bit, which I'll explain. So the agenda are normal news and trends, and we're actually not going to do the theme of readiness for today because it's a special show today. It's the last one before we break for summer. So we thought we'd take the opportunity to do a sort of a bit of a review of 2026 so far and the second half of the year, which we're about to start. That's sort of the dream, what we're going to be dreaming about in the future. So should be quite interesting. And then hopefully we'll have some interesting conversation about that. And yeah. So we'll be back on September 14th. So that's the Monday after Labor Day. So we're going to have a nice break where you don't have to think about Monday Live for 2 months. Yay. So as normal, I'm going to hand it over to Ken Sinclair for some news from automated buildings. Ken, all yours.
Thank you very much. Okay, lots of stuff going on as usual. Up in the top left-hand corner, this I think ASHRAE has given us a real gift in their support of the knowledge graphs and their foresight into that, and then that connection when coupled with BACnet. So I just did a quick post there asking a devilish question: is can a BACnet point generate a knowledge graph? And the answer was no, but it certainly has the start of it, and it sort of goes through how they see that's happening, and it actually links to some of the ASHRAE material, which I hadn't read that much either. So I'm struggling with trying to get my head around all of this as everybody is. So I've been just posting some of my questions to AI, and that's one of them. So it's not completely factual or approved by a committee, but it gives you some ideas of the potential that is there, which I think is huge. The one below that, trust is the architecture getting ready for AI in buildings. This was in our discussion last Monday, and trust is everything. We're all here because of somebody trusts us to be here. But the bigger thing is for us to AI is people, I think, generally don't trust it unless they have seen the results and have somebody being the steward and then basically virtually transferring their trust to the AI versions that they are doing. So I think that's an important piece as well. We went a little different direction there, and we talked about the quick food service industry and how high the intensity is there. Those numbers actually even surprised me when I saw them. I knew they would be high, but I didn't think they'd be that much higher than office buildings, or they're starting to get into the area of data centers. So that is an interesting article as well. The ASHRAE conference is going on right now, and I think Anto's going to tell you a bit about his adventures there, and both Jim Lee and Kimon are there presenting tomorrow. And I'm not sure if you saw, but Kimon did a post explaining why he's not here at Monday Live, so that's online. I came across this EU AI Act. And it's interesting because we talked about regulation and governance, and this is governing our governance, I think. And it's a bit dated, but that's kind of interesting too, is to actually see some of this thinking that had come out a couple of years ago and actually got into governance. So it's a good point there. We're starting to think about Chicago, more than think about it. We're starting to put together our programs and stuff, and we'll be working over the holidays to do that. We were really pleased with the results we had at Chicago, and actually, and the way we were able to cross-pollinate some of the speakers from Monday Live into our standard AHR things. I think we want to try and explore that a bit more for Chicago and see what we can do. Then we had an article just came online today, I think, when buildings become AI infrastructures, and it builds on this Europe AI Act, and it talks about that if we have the automation, if we take our trust and transfer the AI to the buildings, then we need to have some kind of proof of that we are achieving what it is we say we're achieving. So that's kind of interesting. Down at the bottom there in the middle wedge is the GitHub, and that's the C4SB GitHub, and there's a tremendous amount of resource on GitHub. And ultimately, I think that's our goal, is we're very much supporting the bureaucracy. We're very much supporting open. And it's nice to see that we're getting the results of that. And there's a whole bunch of information that a lot of people are posting that is free for the taking on GitHub. So take a look at how that's all unrolling. And C4SB is giving us some guidance and is organizing a whole bunch of committees to basically deal with this stuff. The next one in the corner there, and the last one, the rich data versus intelligent. Data rich and intelligent rich. And I think we're going for intelligent rich. Basically, Kimon does a great discussion and pulls out some great points on that article if you click on that. So that's about it. Back to you, Anto.
Thank you, Ken. Mentioning the ASHRAE annual conference, I just got back from there. I was in Austin over the weekend and did a presentation with Jim Lee and David Holmberg on AI and cloud-related matters. So that was very interesting. And as Ken said, both Jim Lee and Kimon are still there doing stuff. So good luck. All the best to them. So next up is Ken. I mean, not Ken, Rick.
And I went and checked my other computer. I thought I had updated this, but I failed. Sorry. I'm going to highlight a couple things, though. The first Thursday is this Thursday of July. As Steve Fay was saying, June is apparently over. And first Thursday is this Thursday. So we'll have a town hall this Thursday. The focus of the town hall will be a couple of the working groups that are soon to be announced, or that are soon to be in GitHub. I guess we'll talk about the status of those. One of them is cybersecurity. We'll highlight a little bit about what's been updated in the BACnet Cloud Collective, and we will also talk about the Open Controls working or interest group, which and we'll have a little bit of discussion of where smart grid goes. And so if you've got an opinion of where smart grid might fit with the existing working groups or interest groups, we'll talk about that. And maybe it goes under open controls, maybe it doesn't belong under open controls, not sure, but there will be some discussion about that. And then we're going to do what I think is going to be a start of a sort of a primer kind of portion of the town hall, which will be this time or this month, it'll be Knowledge Graph 101. And there's a lot of misunderstanding about graphs and graph of graphs and what triples are and what 223 brick and rec are using in terms of knowledge graphs, and the fact that there's a BACnet RDF. There's just a lot of misunderstanding about what is a knowledge graph and what isn't. And we're going to try and get a little bit of a primer on that, or a primer, as some people like to say, um, to just get sort of a little bit more level set on what is this thing that we're calling graphs. And then when we say things like map of the graphs or graph of graphs, what does that mean? And I think that's pretty important at this phase of our evolution of, leveraging modern technology into our space. So that'll be part of the focus on Thursday.
Could you put the link to for people to register for the town hall?
Yeah, I'll work on that and try and get that in here shortly.
Okay. And your second slide that's the same as the prospectus that you prepared, right?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Any other updates from anyone before we move on? Hearing none, we shall proceed. So, Midsummer Smart Dream. So the whole sort of idea for this is that we'll sort of briefly think about just go through what we've actually done this year, and I'm actually just going to go through all the different months we've been and the various themes that we've been using throughout the months, and then we can have an open conversation about that and also about where we should go. And I have some thoughts that I want to share on that. So we started January on the road to Vegas as we were all getting ready to go to AHR that was in Vegas. So that was very interesting. I ended up not going to Vegas, so I stayed at home, but everybody else did. And I'm sure we'll come back to talking about Vegas because an awful lot of things happened in Las Vegas this year in terms of pursuing the agenda of this group. And I think Ken was alluding to that. Then after January, this is not very original, but after going to Vegas, we have Vegas in the rearview mirror, which is just reflecting on what actually happened in Vegas and over the course of February. So I think that was also very interesting, just to remind everyone of this. Then in March, we went with a theme of governance, which I recall everybody, me included, were a little bit concerned that this would end up being really sort of boring and dry, but it didn't end up that way. It actually ended up quite very interesting, and we should sort of reflect on that if we can, in terms of what governance is and how we should be starting to think about governance. So that was March. In April, we took AI and said, what does AI look when we apply it to the Smarter Stack, which is this tool that we created a couple of years back, which you see the stack here. That was also very enlightening. My recollection of that is that in a way you can think of AI being in each layer of the stack, but you can also think about AI as being the thing that's at the top, the purpose, the sort of not controlling, but sort of influencing the lower layers of the stack. So again, that was quite interesting. And then in May, we got back to basics and went through the basics of the past, and then we started to think about what the basics of the future in various areas, including AI and various other things. So again, that was in May, and in June, the month that we're just sort of concluding now, we were talking about readiness, and we were talking about AI readiness and what readiness means in the example of the PAE building and various other perspectives. So that's also very interesting. So that's kind of the past, and I'll open it up in a minute, and we can all sort of talk about that. But in terms of dreaming our way forward, which is the other half of the topic today, I've been thinking a lot about this, and over the weekend and the last few days, I've been sort of creating a sort of a framework to think about this, and none of the panelists have actually seen this, so this will be the first time for all of us. But the idea is that we've been starting to talk about trust and governance, which are sort of very related. But I suggest that we really need to have a destination. And I kind of think that to think about autonomy as being a sort of a way of taking us forward into, we've talked about autonomous buildings before, which is obviously something that is really kind of interesting, especially in the age of AI. So how are we going to be able to think about trust when we start to think about autonomy and autonomous buildings? And so the way I'm sort of thinking about this that I'm sharing here is there's really sort of two different dimensions. The first dimension is the vertical dimension here, where in the top we have what I'm calling the policy layer. So this is the things that we do to decide what happens. It's the rules of engagement in all of these systems that goes all across all of the systems in the building. So I'm sort of referring to that as the policy layer. And at the bottom, there's an operations layer, which is the difference there is that the operations layer is how specific systems exchange bits and bytes and how they actually act. So that's the actual runtime environment. So you have a policy layer and an operation layer sort of in the vertical axis. And in the horizontal axis, we have I've put human answerable on the left and autonomous agent on the right. So this is kind of almost like a timeline. We obviously we come from here, and this is kind of where we want to end up. That's the premise. So if we think about this as a matrix, this is how we've been behaving in the past however many decades. Policy is always done by executed by humans, and this is really how we've been operating as an industry. And trust rests on human reputations and accountability. Everything is all the stuff that we know about running a business and designing and implementing buildings. So that's really how the sort of the traditional way of thinking about how we think about things. And I'm sort of saying that from a human perspective, human answerable perspective, there's also the sort of this policy stuff emerges in operations also executed by humans. Again, this is the past. This is where we've been. So all of the work is done. And obviously there are some challenges with that in terms of scale and to grow, but also we know it works because we understand humans. So this is kind of where we've been, is on the left side is human answerable. So the sort of thinking of this is if we take it forward, how does the policy work here? Because I'm not sure that AI is going to be the entity that's creating policy. I would imagine that that's something that we as humans would want to keep. We want to continue to sort of define the policy that gets executed by agents. And that's the difference from the left is that gets executed by humans. So that's kind of one way of thinking about it. So I'm pretty sure this is a right sort of way of thinking about it. And then last but not least, at the bottom, we actually have the fact that the policy that was created up here gets implemented and gets executed by agents. And this is obviously high risk, and agents are involved, and all this sort of this is where all the sort of the risks and the question marks are. So I think this is sort of an interesting way of thinking about it, because it's kind of there are different technologies that sort of go up and down, and different issues that go up and down the vertical axis, and the horizontal axis is obviously as we move from the human-centric world into agent and AI-centric autonomous mechanism. So I'm going to stop here and open it up to the panel for discussion.
I actually really like this, Anto, because it's an area that I've been giving a lot of thought to in what we're doing currently. the merge to agents, right? And for me, it does a couple of things. One is I think it better describes the concept of autonomous buildings, right? I've always struggled with the term of autonomous buildings because people really didn't really know how to define that and uh, put substance to that. And people were throwing the words around, without much context per se. But I think tying autonomous to agents I think, is the right approach. Couple of things that jump out at me. Something that I'd be interested to hear from the rest of the group too is when we get to that bottom right, the top right, the policy by humans executed by agents. One of the questions I've got is who in your organization should be creating agents, right? I know the part of our challenge in today's AI world is that you can make statements like policy by humans executed by agents. It's a little bit like the whole even what Claude has done, that in the past, pre-Claude, almost pre-ChatGPT, I had data scientists who created models who gave, I produced the data and they produced the output. We had a lot of control and override over the models that were being created and the output that was being generated. Now with Claude, and especially with it being prevalent in any organization, at scale, everybody's writing their own quote unquote models, right? By asking their own questions, right? The guardrails to Keith's continuing comment has come off and people are just doing whatever they want. And that's okay in an LLM AI world. But when we move to agents, we're now in a different space, right? Are we going to have the same wild, wild west of anybody in your organization can write any agent that they want, which kind of talks to, I guess, Roger's questions about governance in that context, right? What happens with agents? So I'd kind of be keen to kind of get people's views on that. And my other one that jumps out at me is, the big advantage of the left-hand side of policy by humans executed by humans, policy emerges, operation executed. Unfortunately, one of the reasons that worked is because I knew who to sue when it didn't work, right?
That's the accountability part.
That's the accountability part, right? Yeah. So when it's robots, when my Tesla doesn't, when it drives into the wall, who do I sue? Yeah, type of deal, which we'll have the problem on the right-hand side. Anyway, so those are my two observations, right? When we get into agents and autonomous agents, how do we think that's going to work when everybody and anybody can write an agent?
Including other agents.
Including other agents. Yeah, good point.
There you go. And Roger, you're right. The governance really is something that goes maybe even mostly on the policy layer. I think this is the execution of governance. I don't know. I can blame the AI for doing this graphic.
Can't sue it.
AI doesn't want governance involved, apparently, right?
Yeah. It's others' thoughts on this as a way of thinking about where we're going?
Just quickly, I'm impressed with how well AI generates your graphics, not just this one, but all the previous ones you showed. The quality of the presentation from a PowerPoint perspective, if you think of it that way, and although it's Google Slides, I appreciate that. But I'm assuming that all the visuals that you've been showing, Anto, have been done with the assistance of AI. Is that correct? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so, it just the quality and the professionalism is just kind of inherent. It's really very impressive in that regard. But with regard to the actual trust matrix that you put together, I think this is excellent and a little bit like smarter stack. It's a one-page visual that everybody can now use to discuss how they want to go from the left side to the right side. I don't know that you need more than the 4 quadrants you have. Hopefully we don't, because it's, keep it simple is always better. And so I think this is a really, really effective diagram that you created, that as we look to the next 6 months and getting ready for ASHRAE in Chicago, this should be a very valuable tool for guiding those discussions.
Great. Appreciate the feedback.
Yep.
Tracy, Rick, others?
Yeah, I was going to come back to maybe focus in a little bit on the policies. So let's talk through what we think, policy by humans means exactly. I think we've struggled with that a little bit. I don't have an answer necessarily, but I mean, guardrails on, things that are going on, that one seems pretty obvious.
So Tracy, let me give you an example from the cyber perspective. In all the work I've done in cyber, one of the key areas is user administration. And we've always pushed owners to have a very defined policy around how that works. And starting with who owns the decision around who gets access to the systems. And that should, in our recommendation, should always be the owner. It should not be vendors. In fact, vendors should have to ask for approval and on any given new user they want to gain access. And then as their employees leave or take on different jobs or no longer have need for that access, it should be a policy that makes that very obvious and is a whole sign-off procedure. So the ownership of that administration of users is a policy that is written out and can be then put into place, and an agent can then make sure it's being followed. Okay. But for now, the question is, will people be rigorous in their implementation of the policy? My experience is no, but you got to start with the policy on how you're going to administer users and how they get added and removed from the system and what permissions are given and all of that. So just using that as an example of a policy that's applicable to any type of OT system that we could possibly have. That's a very important one that should be always the responsibility of the owner, or maybe the owner's representative, maybe in the case of Anto's business, where they delegate that method, that policy for its implementation to a CBRE as an example.
That's a good example. Thank you.
So, and Tracy, were you going to continue? I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay. So so to me, the question, again, my son being an attorney that mostly works on IP for software, where's the console for the policies? So we understand where you go to set somebody's password up and to give authority for someone to have access to a certain piece of software. Where's the console for what you're talking about on here? And this is the big question that everybody's asking is like, okay, well, wait a minute. I get the fact that we're going to have autonomy. We're going to need to have some policies. Back to the law school, they used to write laws and they'd publish them in a book and they'd go into a library, and then the attorneys would all go to the library and they'd study the laws and they'd know what to do. Where are the policies written down? What is the software that these agents go look at to see the policy? And here's where there's no answer right now, by the way, in case anybody was wondering. Right now, LLMs go to the entire body of work of human writings and computer writings to look for answers to LLMs. But in an organization like a big real estate management company, for instance, they can probably create a place where the policies get written down. But where are the rest of the policies? And who writes the literally what is it, a spreadsheet? Is it a database? I'm going to suggest that maybe it's an RDF database if it is a database. But where are we entering these policies?
I think that's a really relevant point, Rick, because it talks to my earlier point about part of the problem with agents, anybody can write them now, right? So before in the left-hand side, the policies by humans and executed by humans and policy, executed by humans. A person isn't going to go do something unless he's got write-off from his boss and everything else that says go do the job. So the left-hand side is well defined and well known, and he could check policies whether it's something in or out. To your point, my problem with the right-hand side a little bit, especially the bottom line, is since anyone in my team can write an agent, to your exact point, where are the policies does it go check to, and how do I know it's checking those policies as well, right?
Yeah, but
The
Rick,
law
Rick,
books are
yes.
fine.
Rick, policies from a business standpoint, it's very common that there's HR policies. There's usually a manual that covers all the HR policies. Also, from the financial standpoint, the finance department, they write a set of policies in terms of how much money you can spend, what the maximum on a credit card, all that stuff gets written down. So there's mechanisms, if you will, already in place for at least those two areas of a business, from the finance side and from the HR side.
But everything, marketing, we have a style guide for our marketing.
Yeah, exactly.
Who does
So
it?
where is it? Where is it for smart grids and for building automation systems?
But where has it been in the past? Why are we injecting this just like because AI is on the scene? Like, of course, this stuff has already been in place. Like, where is it now?
But I think I agree with you, Keith. But I think the question is, how do we make sure the agents check those policies?
Right.
I'm not too worried. I agree. The policies we've got policies. Everyone's got policies and stuff, and you can write them down. But how do I know the agent's checking that policy? The left-hand side guy, he's not going to go to site and do something until his boss says, "Yeah, verily go to site and do this job." So
yeah, I'm gonna challenge whether we've actually got those policies written down, because until Guideline 36 came out, and I don't think that most buildings that are running VAV and air handler systems, they do not know what the Guideline 36 even is. So I'm not sure that if an agent is running my air handler, how do I know that it is what policies is it using? We used to call these sequence of operations, but now we're calling them policies, right? And what is coming into the decision criteria of the decision to allow somebody in a door or whatever. I'm seriously asking, like in a smart building system that's been delivered by somebody, where do you go besides giving authority for passwords and stuff, which we do know? Where do the policies get written down so that we can do an audit of them?
Yeah, I think that's
I don't think
good,
there is
a good,
place, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good question.
I mean, it's like when you sign up for any of the LLM models, in your profile, you can go in and check, use my data for training or not, or, things like that. So application by application, there's some of that built in, I think, but I don't know in our case. I guess that's something that would have to be built in to the application or to the data set. If I subscribe to a weather service, right? And I'm consuming that data. And I am sure somewhere in fine print that I never read, there's rules about how I can use that data and how much and what for and so on and so forth. But that's not necessarily built into an AI application to do that unless you tell it to.
So, guys,
The policies and
in a larger organization like a university or a REIT, there's always a guy who's responsible for facilities, right? the director, vice president, whatever, facilities. Do you think in many of those cases that individual has created a policy document similar to the head of HR or the head of finance?
I think that's the open question for me too, Steve, right?
Yeah.
Obviously there are well-run organizations that do that, right?
Mhm.
But we've all run into the organizations who, don't have it as well defined. And then part of my concern is oftentimes that guy, not all the time, but that guy, he may have contracted out a lot of that work to, MSIs or other folks.
Mhm.
Who he basically trusts that, quote unquote, they have written down the policy of what they're supposed to be doing, right? Or there's some agreement in place. And so, what's the level of the detail? So from my experience, I find a smorgasbord to that answer, right?
Yeah, and it's
Some really
layered.
good ones to some really, really bad ones.
This is layered. If you use kind of following that example a little bit, like when we do deployments, we have policies. They've got to show up dressed in a certain way and, wearing our logo stuff and so on. And then you need somebody there to supervise that and make sure that that's enforced. How they behave when they show up, how they interact with customers, that kind of stuff is all written down. And hopefully, you give that to people and you hope that they read it and follow it, but you never know. If we translate that into AI agents working on our behalf, we need similar guidance on as part of the application, as part of that, what that agent does. Or it's a separate agent that's monitoring. I don't know how that's architected exactly, but
Jennifer
I
from
like
Duke.
Jennifer's. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jennifer from Duke University just weighed in and said that, in her organization, they have a lot of policies and it's actually a challenge to manage them all.
Yeah.
So that which uh, confirms my suspicions that some organizations really do a good job of this and have and create policies, which is what which is what we want. But Tracy, in your world, where you're dealing with like quick serve restaurants and maybe a guy's got 20 or 30 restaurants, I don't think there is that person who would create those policies. And I'm sure you agree with me. And so,
Yeah.
they're running blind from that perspective.
Yep.
I will say, on the other hand, and to go on Jennifer's point a little bit, and I've seen this too, even in our organization, we too have a buttload of policies. Well, I know where they all are, and have I read them? And do I know if I'm in compliance with all the policies that I'm supposed to be in compliance? Probably not, right? Knowing me, I'm probably have violated many policies just today. So one of the things I do find with agents, if you do have it written down and well defined, agents are a lot more rigorous and much more um, judicious on having the policy there, right? If you've got it, that is a huge step in going down that path, because people aren't that great about looking up a policy and should I be doing this, should I not be doing this?
Roger's point about they are at the application layer, and then yeah, where's the audit of whether the application layer is looking at the latest policy update? And again, we're talking about when we're talking about autonomous, we're talking about new agents that are being, to Arnold's point, being created by anybody, and those agents are acting like software or acting like applications, but we don't know if the agent actually has followed, as Roger says, it's got to be at the application layer. Well, that's the whole question: is the agent who is now acting on my behalf and pretending that it's an application, is it going out and looking at the policies? And the reality is they're not right now. And as we get, and what's the policy on paying for that weather app? Who was it that talked about the weather app?
Yeah.
Tracy talking about, okay, so the weather.com decides to increase their monthly fee. Does the application break, or does the agent come look for an allowance increase?
Yeah.
And that
So Ken,
Pardon?
go ahead, Rick.
what I think what we're looking for, or what we're hoping to be able to demonstrate is that if agents are, if we get a little more standardized on what we used to call APIs, and now we're calling whatever we're calling them, if we're getting more standardized, then the agents can be better governed, but can be better, the policies can be more accurately, audited. And again, I was kind of joking earlier when I was saying, hopefully, we're going to be putting things into formats and putting our systems into formats where the agents can easily get to them. And so that's, again, where knowledge graphs come in. But that's, and the graph of graphs, so that the agents know what to go check. Because these agents didn't go to college. They did not study law, pretty sure.
Well, they kind of did, Rick. They went out to the
They
internet
passed
and
the
sucked
bar.
out all our
Yeah.
knowledge.
They passed the
This
bar.
is
Yeah.
human knowledge recirculated from a Google search in aggregate.
Yeah,
This is all coming from humans anyway.
yeah,
It came from humans.
yeah. They are still not going to create the artwork, right?
No, and like Steve was talking about the cybersecurity policies around a particular building or application, one building will be different than the next. And the good and the bad news is that AI is very inquisitive and will go read everything or anything. And the bad news is the same thing, right? But if part of your application is read these policies, it will consume that and do its best to follow those policies, which is a good news thing also. But still, you have to check, are they being followed properly? Like I couldn't, even though I have my Claude set up not to train, use my data externally, I couldn't prove that they're not doing that right now. I wouldn't know how to go about that. So
Yeah, Ken, I was just going to ask you, because you mentioned trust earlier when you were doing your piece, and you've written about it, and I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on this sort of framing of trust being this sort of matrix of stuff.
Yeah, I was just poking around there when you guys were talking, and because I'd seen this thing from Gartner, and it's asking the question, will AI eat software? And I think the question is even bigger than that. Will it eat our policies, or will it create our policies? And I'm kind of thinking that may be the way that our policies will be created in the future, is by agents that will take a look at what policies we have existing and do summaries and basically help us manage them. Because I think, as Anno said, he doesn't really know all the policies, and we've all signed all of these things for software and agents that we use, and we don't really know what it is we've signed. And maybe the only way to unravel that is AI is really good at pulling out details. So anyway, I'm just kind of wondering how much AI can actually help us create the policy. The policy appears in every quadrant of your graph there. So the policy is the focus in my mind. The policy layer, you're calling it. I believe that policy layer is not all that accurate, and not all that well defined right now in our existing buildings, and we probably need help trying to make that a little clearer.
Are you saying?
Yeah,
Sorry, are you saying, Ken, that the resurgence of consulting engineering should come about in helping us set our policies for agents? Sounds like an opportunity for someone.
Yeah, I think so. I think I'm heading in that direction. Is that maybe AI can help us get a better view of how we manage our policies, how we create and manage our policies. I'm not sure.
Tristan just weighed in on that, Ken.
Pardon?
Tristan just weighed in on that point you made.
Right. Yeah. I mean, clearly AI can help us manage and organize policies. That's what Jennifer's saying, that she created a policy specifically, a library specifically, agent library. So
yeah, I think, yeah. I agree with Tristan.
One of the ways that I've been thinking about this policy layer and the operation layer, and you're right, policy, the word policy is in every quadrant, but so is the word operations, right? So that's just descriptive. But the way I think about policy is that this is what should happen, and operations is what actually happens. Does that
Yeah.
framing work?
For me, it does, Anto, and I do like how it's framed in that context because that's always the gap, right? And we just talked about it, right? There are good organizations like Duke, Jennifer, it's got policies and probably adheres and has, programs. But I always find there's always a gap, right? There's always the rogue human, me, good example, rogue human who, yeah, I read the policy, but I'm ignoring it, for some reason. Where, which is not a good situation to be in. Agents can be like, yeah, I've read the policy and I've been told not to ignore it, so I'm not going to ignore it, and therefore I have to execute against it. But there is a gap, right? And the gap can be thin and can be really wide depending upon the organization again.
The gap is the work.
The gap is the work. And I keep going back to Keith's point. I know that we're putting a lot of onus on, agents are going to go rogue and kill us all, anyway. So we have to put all this governance and policy around it. But your baseline is what do we as humans do today, right? Not in an ideal world, in the real world, right? How many of our technicians really do what we ask them to do and do it properly and all that sort of stuff. So you got to start with the baseline, right?
And that's not very good, is what you're saying.
And my great example is people driving cars. We as people driving cars are absolutely the worst. I'm the worst candidate. I should never be allowed to drive a car. My wife and everybody tells me constantly. And when I put on the auto drive, everyone's like, here, thank God, right now. So if the baseline in car driving is me, yeah, anything that Tesla does is markedly better in that context. Same in our world, right? So, and this is where I side with Keith too, right? We keep striving for this crazy ideal world when the baseline is so poor to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a signal for me to jump in on this. But yeah, I think establishing human policies is the worst thing we could do. Like, that's what we're trying to get away from. So, I mean, example of human policy in action right now with some of our customers, they bought into this load cycling concept where if you turn your HVAC off 50% of the time, you're going to save 50% on your energy.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Humans came up with that. AI
Exactly.
would never do that. So
yeah, that's a very good example. Yep.
So how do we use this to frame the second half of the year and to frame our conversations in Chicago? Or does this help or with any of that?
Well, I would argue that you've added a third element to the overall discussion. So the first two being how we describe data, right? Knowledge graphs, etc., right? RDF. The other being the AI in general, just AI being used to facilitate the running of the building. And now you've added a third piece here called the trust matrix, which we really haven't. And out of that, what it's identified is the lack of policies, or in some cases, the lack, in some cases, as Keith just pointed out, ridiculous policies that don't work. But it's another, it's a very critical element that we have never really talked about up to this point. So we spent the first 6 months, more or less, going into this whole discussion around how to model data so that it can be easily shared amongst different silos, right? and users and applications, and then talked about, wow, AI is coming in fast and furious. This is another reason why we got to be very good about how we model our data. But in general, talking about how we want to see AI do its thing because it's going to have very positive impacts on operations as a whole. But now, rightfully so, Anto, you added this whole thing of policies, and it's like, whoa, we hadn't even. That's like a whole nother new area we haven't really talked about.
But just to point out one thing, the actual model inside AI is actually called a policy that is executed, and it has been for decades.
Yeah.
So policies have always been with part of AI. Ironic that we're acting like we're going to add this because of AI when it's already there. It literally is a policy. That's what it's called.
But this framing is not really just about AI. I know that's kind of the focus. And you were off. You dropped off for a bit. I was sort of saying the way I think about it is policy is what should happen, and operation layer is what actually happens. So that's kind of my way of thinking about it. So it's not just policy in terms of a document written about access control or whatever. It's a lot of other things in terms of how the building should operate, because that to me is the policy. It's the policy layer. It's not just policy.
And we should have that regardless if AI is present or not.
Correct. Right.
Yep.
That's the point.
That's the point, right?
Yep.
That's what I'm saying. We've got to stop treating this as special. If the baseline of if they're not doing it as a human, AI is
AI is going to not do it faster.
It's not going to do it faster, right? So to Keith's point, I mean, it's
Well, but this is I'm going to go back to guideline 36. ASHRAE came out with a policy guidance. How many buildings do you guys know are actually complying with guideline 36?
0.
There's at least 5, right? I mean, I'm guessing, but there's
Single digit.
We should ask Jennifer. She's still on. But this is what I mean by, yes, there are some things where there are guidelines and policies that are written down, but are we actually using them? And to Keith's point is like, some of the policies are bad. Well, how do we judge them, and where do we decide which ones should be? And because agents are moving into a new dimension, the agents honestly don't know to go check. They don't know what to go check in with. So just because an agent knows how to operate a VAV box, let's say with guideline 36, and all of a sudden you throw in DER with solar panels and batteries and stuff like that, now there's a new, but this AI agent doesn't know about those batteries and the solar panels and the fact that the weather forecast says it's going to be clear skies tomorrow. So
because that's a different set of policies that's been applied to that particular situation. Yeah.
And the existing agent or the existing O&M manual doesn't know that this new capability exists. And that's where the evolution of it is going. And these darn agents are evolving faster than we can write stuff up, I think.
Yeah. Any more thoughts, Tracy, on this in terms of how does this apply in the sort of use cases that you focus on, the sort of the smaller buildings?
I think pulling out the fact that when we talk about policies, it's humans or AI or not. AI is just going to run whatever we tell it to run that much faster, like I was saying, and better or not. So I think that the point is here in general about designing better, smarter, safer buildings, that those policies should exist regardless of use of AI. And it just becomes that much more important when AI agents are kind of cut loose on the building, that they know those policies and all of that is in place and everything is run according to those policies. So I'm with Steve. I hadn't thought through this completely. Now that you bring that up, that's kind of interesting to me.
I think the ability of AI agents to handle this mass problem of policies and its ability to go out and look at all of the policies of the various vendors you have inside of your database is huge. So now it can come back and give us a summary, and this is something we've never had before, is an actual summary of all of our policies.
Right.
And it starts to weigh them against each other, and it talks about the pros and cons. So I think AI will teach us policy. New policies.
Let me modify that a bit. We could always have done it, Ken. We just needed a team of people and folks to do it and go comb through our policies and summarize it and analyze it and do the presentations.
So
The
that's
ROI was never there to do it.
Yeah.
so that's
too
that's
hard.
the AI. It's the AI impact. Is that it was always possible. It's always needed. It's
Yeah.
always important, but it was really hard for us humans to do it at scale.
A-
Well, I think
And-
it's the ROI equation, right? Okay. What's the-
AI has exposed us for all the defects that we have. It's taking the covers off. We all know that.
That's
And
true.
now AI is actually the mechanism that is being used to fix it, ironically.
Agreed.
It just is.
And just to echo that for the last minute, my Tesla literally told me that, Keith. My Tesla kept getting a jiggle in the steering wheel, and I thought it was a defect in the car, and I took it to Tesla. It goes, "No, dude, you're wandering outside your lane all the time."
Yeah, it's shaking it.
It's telling me. Okay, God damn it.
Yeah.
See, you fortunately with Tesla, you have a nice agent.
Yes, that's true.
Remember months ago when we first started on this and we started talking about governance and AI, and I said that one day the AI is going to be actually being regulatory and prescriptive for us.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
starting to happen with cars.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
everybody laughed when I said that the car is going to be giving you a pre-examination or training before
Right.
your license gets renewed. It's not so funny now because it's actually going in that direction.
Well, I don't know if you guys know, and I know we're over time, but if you're trying to get your car insurance on a Tesla, one of the options that Tesla gives you is an insurance based on the quality of your driving.
Oh, wow.
And you can get a reduced insurance policy if you record that your driving is of a particular standard. If it drops below the standard, your insurance starts to hike up significantly. So, yes,
That's
it's
good.
already doing it.
Yep.
I like
Yeah,
it actually.
that's
Yeah,
that's
course.
policy being managed by
Yeah.
AI effectively. Cool.
Of course.
This is a great discussion, and I think we need to think more about how the auto industry is using AI agents and all of this information. And the thing I like is the way they reach out and actually grab the knobs and dials inside your phone or inside your car, and they do a much finer interface. So I think that is a direction we need to kind of watch, and they've got that human side of it as well. And I think we could learn a lot by just watching how the autonomous car industry is evolving. And as we're going to move to the autonomous building, and Suha and I started this years ago. She saw the excitement of the autonomy in buildings, and we've been actually doing that in our AHR sessions as well. I was kind of thinking of maybe changing that, but maybe we don't change that. We'll have to think a little bit more about that, because it's not about making it autonomous, but it's making it more
Trustworthy.
human, a better human interface, or we haven't done a good job of doing a good human interface.
Well, no,
Okay,
we're
we're way over time.
Yeah.
So we need to start to wrap. I think that was a good wrap, Ken. Thank you very much. And so we're all going on summer vacations now, right?
Right.
Off to the beach.
Off to the
right.
beach. All right. Well, everybody have a great summer. We will see you back here on Monday Live on September 14th, the Monday after Labor Day. So have fun, everyone.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Cheers and all that good stuff. Bye.